Hey everybody, this is Kathy Cox-Bonial, the director of the Skills Region 8 STEM Center at Louisiana Tech University in Ruston, Louisiana. And I'm also the director of the Louisiana Girls Collaborative, which brings me to you this evening. We are thrilled to be bringing you our second STEM Her Way webinar. Our first one was wildly successful, and tonight we have another fantastic guest, and we know you're going to enjoy it so much. This is one of those things that's very special because it was an idea that germinated with one of the young ladies that's in the northern part of our state, Ashni Shaw. And I'm going to throw this over to her so she can set it up and let you know who we have tonight.
Hey everyone, my name is Ashni Shah and I'm a high school senior from Shreveport, Louisiana. And I'm super excited to get started today with the second episode of STEM Her Way. And so just a brief background about the program. STEM Her Way, as part of the Louisiana Girls Collaborative project, is basically dedicated to inspiring young middle and high school students to explore many opportunities in STEM fields, while encouraging each other to pursue each other's passions with confidence. And so each webinar in our series spotlights a different female professional in science, technology, engineering, or math. And like I said, today marks our second episode, and I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Jamie Newman as our second guest. And so Dr. Newman is a professor of biology and associate dean for research and graduate studies in the College of Applied and Natural Sciences at Louisiana Tech University. She earned her BA in biology from Amherst College and her PhD in biology from MIT, before making the move to Louisiana and joining the faculty at Louisiana Tech. And as a professor and an administrator, Dr. Newman is involved in teaching at the graduate and the undergraduate level, offering courses in bioethics, research methods, and science and society. She runs an active research program where students engage in learning more about how the environment influences the behavior of human adult stem cells. She is the co-founder and co-director of the VISTA Center, an interdisciplinary collaboration between art and science at Louisiana Tech that offers students an opportunity to use their skills and knowledge to create impactful visuals to enhance communication of complex ideas in science and medicine. She serves as faculty advisor for the Women in STEM and Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students, student organizations, and chair of the Pre-Med/Pre-Dental Advisory Committee. And for all of this, Dr. Newman has been recognized with awards for teaching, research, and advising from Louisiana Tech University. Dr. Newman lives in Ruston with her husband and their two young children. So thank you so much, Dr. Newman. That was a lot. And I'm super excited to hear about everything you have to say for us today. So you can go ahead and
Yeah,
get
well, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. And as I was thinking about it today, I thought, man, everybody listening is so lucky that you do this, because as I share my journey, I will tell you that I knew nothing as I went through to get where I am. And when I was your age, I had no idea what was possible, had never met someone with a PhD in biology. And so I just thank you for doing this. And I hope everyone who's listening appreciates what you're doing as well. So yes, this is a title slide, and these are my professional titles. But as I was thinking about an introduction, really, who am I? I think we put ourselves in boxes very quickly as to who I am. I am a woman in STEM. Well, I'm lots of things, and this is probably not even a whole list of those things. So as you think about what you want to be when you grow up, it's not one thing, it's many things. And maybe you're doing a few of these things at the same time. Right now I'm at home and my kids want to be art studio. So trying to balance that wife, mom, and professional thing. And so it's a lot of hats that a lot of women tend to wear. Men also wear lots of hats. So I think just giving it recognition that we're not just one thing at any given moment. So how did I get here? And who do you want to be and how do you get there? So when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be, I had no idea. I went through like an astronaut, then it was an astronomer. Then my grandma told me you're not going to make any money doing that, so you should be an accountant, because I liked math. And so I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And I honestly didn't even know what I liked to do. I was always so jealous of my sister, who got really into sharks and was going to be a marine biologist, and then got really into history and ended up going to get her PhD in medieval history. She just seemed to know who she was and what she wanted to be from a very young age, and my brother too. And I was just had no idea. Nothing made me really excited until I got into high school and found biology. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. So when I went to college, I thought I was going to be a doctor because I realized I like science. And I thought I want to be a mom and a wife too. Like, that sounds good. That's what I want to be when I grow up. And what I really wanted to be was a scientist, a mom, a wife, a mentor, a friend, all these things, right? So again, it's not just choosing one thing, it's finding a way to combine all these passions and skills that you have. So I grew up in California, in Southern California, in the San Fernando Valley. So if you know the Valley, maybe I used to have a Valley accent. I don't think I do anymore. I've lived too many places to have sustained that. But it was in high school at El Camino. It was a school that had 3,600 students, a public school in Los Angeles, where a biology teacher for my AP biology class let me load one of these agarose gels, which, if you've ever done this or you watch like CSI and you see it light up on that UV block, it was like the coolest thing I had ever seen. And that was the moment when I knew I like biology. Like, the fact that you could see DNA, that you could make sense of what these bands are, was just so exciting to me. So I thought, that's it. I like biology. What do you do if you like biology? You become a doctor. That's all I knew. That's all anybody told me to do. And so I left California and I went to college in Massachusetts. So that's a pretty far trip. And I was pretty scared. I didn't know anybody in Massachusetts. My whole family was in California. My sister had gone to Massachusetts to go to Smith College, but she had graduated and wasn't there anymore. But I went to Amherst College, and it was there that I really found my path. I found research and realized I don't have to be a doctor just because I like biology. I can do something else. And so Amherst College is a small liberal arts college in Massachusetts. So I went from a public high school with 3,600 students to this private college with 1,600 students. So it was kind of a shock, but it was amazing. And when I went there, I actually went to also run track and cross country. So I did indoor, outdoor track and cross country. I did it for 2 years, and I only did it for 2 years because the first summer after my freshman year, I met the man pictured here on the left. The guy on the right's my dad, and the guy on the left is Professor Goldsby. He was my undergraduate advisor who first took me into his research lab. He came to my wedding. I actually talked to him a few weeks ago. He's 89 years old, and I've known him for 25 years now. He doesn't know how to retire, so he's still working. But that man changed my life. So the summer after my freshman year, I wanted to try research. I wanted to stay and run with the girls on the cross country team in Massachusetts. I didn't really want to go back to California. So I applied for a research program at Amherst, and I actually didn't get into the research program. And I really didn't know what to do, but I contacted the woman who headed the research program, and I said, is there anything? Like, I'll wash dishes. I just think I really want to see what this is like. So I'll do anything. She said, well, there were 2 people on the wait list, and if anyone drops out, she'd let me know. Well, someone dropped out because they got a different offer, and she gave 2 applications to Professor Goldsby, and I didn't know him, but he picked me. I don't know why he picked me, but I am forever grateful because I spent that summer working in his research lab, learning about immunology, learning cell culture. I continued to work with him through my sophomore year and junior year of college. He encouraged me to apply to a summer program, and so I did. And I went to Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, which is on Long Island, where I got to meet Jim Watson of Watson and Crick. He lives out there. And that was an intense and amazing experience. First time I've ever been homesick. And I just told you I went 3,000 miles away from home to go to college. But it was there where I really just felt like I love science, but I don't know if I love science as much as everybody else here. It was incredibly intense, something I hadn't experienced at Amherst. So it was a 10-week program, went back to Amherst, did a senior thesis with a different professor studying slime mold amoebae. Interesting, not for me long-term, but good. And as I was finishing up, I realized I didn't know what I was going to do. So I had decided I wasn't going to be a doctor. I had told my parents I wasn't going to be a doctor. That didn't go over great. They didn't know what I was going to do either. So I went to Professor Goldsby and I told him, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go to med school. I really like research. So we talked about grad school, but I hadn't applied to grad school. So he reached out to some people he knew at MIT and sent me over there to meet them to apply for a research assistant job or a technician job to work in one of their labs for a couple of years while I figured out what I was going to do next. So at MIT is where I became a scientist. So I worked in a research lab for 2 years in the cancer center there, working on mouse models of cancer with Tyler Jacks. And while I was there, I realized this is it. This is what I want to do. Like, I love being in this lab every day. And so I applied to graduate school and ended up staying at MIT for my PhD. I had made friends. I had an apartment. I had kind of established a life there during those 2 years. The MIT PhD program was actually pretty small, which I really liked. So I stayed there and did my PhD in a genomics lab, which surprised me, where I learned to culture stem cells and look at the genome. I also met my husband there, who was doing his PhD in chemical engineering. And that's an important part of this story because that is how I ended up in Louisiana. So a lesson here is never say never. At one point I said I would never follow a man, and then I did. I said I would never go to an institute of technology, and then I did. So I probably said I would never live in the South either, but here I am. So while at MIT, I did my PhD. I published some great papers. I realized I really love research. I also realized that I really missed what I had at Amherst, which was this interaction with students and professors, and using the lab as a way to really engage students. So when I graduated, my husband had already moved to Louisiana Tech, where he was teaching chemical engineering. He's a lecturer here. And so when I first moved here, I started as a postdoc in Shreveport, where you are, Ashni, and that was a good experience, but that is not a fun commute. And when you're working in a lab and you have to go in on the weekends and you have to stay late, it can get really difficult and tiring. And I never saw my husband, so I didn't move to Louisiana to not see him and build a life with him. So I ended up leaving that postdoc without a job in Ruston. So I worked at a place called the Fashion of Ruston, which sells clothes, which I did not have skills in. But the woman who owned the shop, when I went in and talked to her, she said, "You really want to work here? You've got a PhD from MIT and you want to do this?" And I said, "Yes, I do. Like, I want to meet people in the community. I need to do something." And it was great. It sounds crazy, I know, but it was good to do something different. It was good to meet people in the community and I learned a lot about Ruston working there. And so I'm so grateful for that. While I was doing that, I kept pursuing opportunities at Louisiana Tech, working in a research lab. I taught a stem cell class, and finally a position opened in biology, so I took it. And it has been, I guess I just finished 13 years as a faculty member at Louisiana Tech. And it has been everything I've wanted in a career that I didn't know I wanted as I went through each of these steps. So as I discovered I loved research, I realized I really love students. I really love mentoring. And what I really love is being someone else's Professor Goldsby, if that makes sense. So he took a chance on me. He showed me something new. He supported me as I went through this whole journey, even to today. And that has meant so much to me. And I think at Louisiana Tech, I get the chance to do that. I have students who didn't know they were going to like research, who didn't feel like they belonged until they found the lab and found other people like them, who like to solve problems, who like to be in the lab. And so I think what I've established there has been really important for those students who have come through my group. So we've got this cool Newman lab logo. We've published some papers. All of these papers have undergraduates and graduate students. They've presented posters. We've watched them grow families. Graduation is like my favorite and saddest day every year because I love seeing them like that. But then I also get sad that they're leaving me. But that particular picture there at the bottom, I think 2 of them are now medical doctors. One of them is in his last year in med school. Actually, 3 of them are medical doctors, and Hannah's about to have a baby. And India is in a PhD program at Tulane, and they just happened to all graduate at the same time. But super proud of them. So it's just given me the opportunity to do what I love. As you mentioned, I also helped to establish the VISTA Center, the Visual Integration of Science through Art, which has been a really cool opportunity also. Never did I think I would be hanging art in a museum. You know, that's not what you do when you're a biologist, but I spent 2-3 days at the Louisiana Art and Science Museum, and I learned how to hang artwork from the best. And so this is a collaboration with an art professor where we teach students how to illustrate scientific concepts. And that is such an important area. Visual communication, it surpasses language barriers, right? To look at a picture and understand COVID transmission. We saw so much of that medical illustration a few years ago, but you see that all the time in your biology textbooks or on a commercial for a pharmaceutical and how it works. And so it's such a powerful tool. And so when students come in, they don't realize when they come to college that they don't have to give up something. They think, well, art, I can't get a job. Well, you can get a job, a really important job, using your art skills and your passion and knowledge in science to communicate these topics to people. So again, really neat stuff I've been able to do, and I'm super proud of that. So I just wanted to end my introduction with a couple thoughts on how do you get to who you want to be. First, it's okay not to know who you want to be when you grow up. I think that's ever changing. It's still changing. I talked to someone today and she asked me, well, where do you see your future self? And I'm like, I don't know. I can only think about 5 years from now, maybe, but it's always changing. And I think being open to that is important, but taking advantage of all situations, joining the lab, asking the questions, watching the webinar, reaching out to someone you find interesting. Find someone who supports you and will help you figure out that path that maybe you don't know what that path is yet, but find your Professor Goldsby, whoever that might be. It doesn't have to be a professor. For me, it was, but it could be a parent, a friend. Find your passion. I think that's actually not that easy to do. And I think we look at other people like they know it and they've always known it and they were born knowing it, but I'm not sure that's true. So take your time and find that thing that you're so excited about and then go after it. And then I think you get to do the thing you love every day. Every day is not easy, but every day brings something exciting. So I think that is my introduction of me and how I got to be all the things you read about at the beginning. And there's my information, but I can stop sharing and answer questions or leave that up, whatever you'd like.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Dr. Newman, for sharing your incredible experiences with us today. And so I do have a few questions lined up, and I know everyone has and will gain valuable perspectives from your presentation. And so thank you. So firstly, I know that your research explores how the environment influences the behavior of human adult stem cells. And this is actually super interesting to me because I actually conducted my 10th grade science fair project on like stem cells and the use of stem cells in generating human kidney nephrons for the purpose of kidney transplants. And so I think regenerative medicine is so cool and it holds so much promise for the future. So I just wanted to ask, how do you like working with bioengineering and regenerative medicine? And why do you focus on this specific area?
Yeah, great question. I also think stem cells are amazing and regenerative medicine is amazing. So actually how I got into stem cells, my true passion is in the genome. So what I think is so amazing is you have trillions of cells in your body, right? And of those, there's hundreds of different types of cells, yet every one of those cells has the exact same genome in it for the most part, right? There can be some spontaneous mutations, but each genome expresses genes differently. It's how you have different types of cells and muscles and eyes and all of the things that we have, right? And how does a genome know how to do that? Because a genome is super, super tiny. I think of it a lot like a Slinky, which I thought I might have in this mess of stuff, but I can't find one right now. And it's opening and closing all the time to turn on and off gene expression. And so stem cells give us the opportunity to understand that in a way in normal cells versus cancer cells. So we can ask a question about what genes are expressed when stem cells are replicating or they're self-renewing, they're making copies of themselves, which is really important for regenerative medicine. And then when they're differentiating, so if they're becoming a fat cell or a bone cell or a muscle cell or a kidney cell, then they have to turn off some genes and they have to turn on a whole nother set of genes. And how do they know how to do that? I find that so amazing. And so that's how I really got into stem cells. And then because I work in stem cells and they have these great properties of self-renewal and differentiation, and just putting them on different surfaces causes them to become something else. Again, just amazing. If you put them on a stiff surface or a soft surface, their fate changes. And so I got into a collaboration with Dr. Mary Calderera Moore in biomedical engineering. So we've published a number of papers together looking at how the cells interact with those biomaterials for regenerative medicine purposes, because you need a scaffold to really allow them to become what you need them to become in a way that's functional for regenerative medicine. So I think they have tremendous potential. They've come such a long way in such a short period of time. You see them in many more places than I thought you would in the time that since I was in graduate school working on this, which just sounds like a long time ago when I think about it now, but 20 years ago doesn't sound that long in terms of scientific progress. So yeah, that's how I got into them and why I enjoy working with them so much.
Yeah, that's super cool. I love that topic. I would love to do that in the future in a
Yeah.
lab. I never like studied them in a lab. I just kind of did research like at home, but
Mhm.
that's interesting. And so like you said, you mentor many students throughout your lab, and then also just with the Women in STEM Club and the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. And so what role do you think this mentorship has played in your own career and just kind of your character development, I guess?
Oh, that is a great question. Because I certainly learned so much from the students. I know that sounds very cliched, but I think developing a relationship with them so that they come to me and I can better understand their situation, because my role is very different from theirs. So I guess a good example is really through the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. Um, as I started working more with that group, I would have, especially the female students would come see me and they would ask me questions about what do I need to do to prepare for med school, and do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? And I said, well, didn't you get this information, or haven't you talked to other people? And they weren't getting the same information and they didn't know who to ask, and they didn't have someone in their family, and this isn't just minority students, the MAPS is open to all students who are interested, but it was through that group, I think, because they were really looking for those opportunities, that information, that it became very clear to me that we weren't making information really accessible to everybody, that if you didn't know the right person or you didn't know who to ask, you weren't getting that information. And so it brought to my attention this issue of accessibility that's super easy to address if you know that it exists. And so those relationships I've been able to build with students through those student organizations, because they see me in a different way, right? They invite me to give a talk similar to this, and I introduce more of the human side of me, or they've seen my kids because they want to do something in the evening. So Jacob and Mallory, come on with me. And so they see me differently and they approach me differently. And then I can gain some insight into their experience and I can change how I behave or help to provide them with the resources they need and the opportunities they need. And so that has really helped me grow professionally, I think, and be better at what I do.
Yes, yes. Okay. I mean, totally understandable. I personally work in a lab at LSU, the Shreveport one, and my
Mhm.
mentor is I kind of have a similar relationship with her where like, she's a woman, so I like feel super comfortable going to her and asking for advice, not just related to, science, but
Mhm.
life, which, I think
Yeah.
everyone needs a mentor like that in their life. So and this is kind of a broader question, but of course, the whole goal of this webinar series is kind of to provide, um, encouragement to young girls specifically. And so, as a woman that has achieved milestones in scientific research and, STEM, can you share some of the challenges you may have faced and kind of how you overcame them? Or if not you, maybe people around you, women around you.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's funny when you're in them, you don't always realize how those challenges really impacted you or shaped you. But I was thinking recently, as I prepare for the fall quarter, I teach graduate research methods, and I always give on the first day a lecture about the student-mentor relationship, which is such an important relationship in graduate school or in research like you're doing. But figuring that out is difficult, and figuring out that you are your best and sometimes only advocate is a super important lesson to learn. So knowing what you want and what you want out of an experience is important. And I was in a research lab that was pretty competitive. And I was a graduate student, and I was a female graduate student, and there just weren't many women in the lab. And along the way, I realized that there was a difference in how my professor talked to the female students and how he talked to the male postdocs. They were mostly postdocs. And it wasn't bad, it was just different. And at some point I went to him, I had to figure it out. It took me about 2 years to figure this out. And I went to him and I said, I want to be good at what I do, and I need you to help me do that. You need to be critical of my writing. You need to tell me when it's not good. I admitted, I said, I might cry. I'll try to save it for when I leave, but I want to be good at what I do. And so to recognize that and to ask for the help I wanted was hard and really important. And when I did that, he said, all right, I will do that for you. What do you need me to do? So we talked about, I want to meet with you every other week. I want to do this. I want you to send me back drafts. And we did it, and I was much, much better for it. And as I finished up, and I asked him to go for a beer so we could talk about life and finishing up my PhD, I I reflected on that, and he did too. And he said, like, if I hadn't asked that, he didn't think he would have been able to do that for me, that he didn't know what it was that I needed. And so I think that's not necessarily a female challenge, but I think we as women might be more reserved or less likely to ask for help, especially in a kind of intimidating environment. You don't want to appear weak. You don't want to appear like you don't know what you're doing. But I wanted to learn to be good at what I was doing. And I have lots of memories of some very difficult conversations and some really highly edited text. But I learned so much from all of that. So I'm so glad I did it. It's probably one of the hardest conversations I've ever had to have with somebody, because I didn't know how he would respond to that. But again, it goes back to knowing what you want. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I knew right then I wanted to be good at doing what I was doing. And I needed to stand up for myself to get what I wanted out of that experience. So I tell students that story at least once a year. Because if you don't tell me what you want, I don't know how to help you, right? That's still true now. I can do my best, I can guess, but if you can tell me what you need, then I can help you get there.
Right. Yes, that's good advice. Always go for what you want. It's hard as a woman, especially, to kind of put your voice out there, but just as valuable, if not more, for us to kind of like advocate for what we want, I think. And this is my last question. I don't know if Miss Kathy has any more, but another kind of broader one, but what advice would you give to young Louisiana, maybe middle and high school girls that are passionate about STEM or kind of interested in it, but are uncertain about like pursuing it as a career or in college?
I would say, one, if they're watching this webinar, they're already on the right track to know what is out there. There's so much opportunity to be engaged in research or STEM in so many different kinds of ways. So just start exploring what those are. Talk to people, ask questions. I think I love to talk about what I do. I think any of us would love to talk about what we do. I answer lots of emails. So if you find someone you think that looks cool, I wonder how she did that or what that job looks like, send an email and you'll get a response. Maybe not, but you've got to try. And just start building a network of people who are doing cool things, even if you've not met them, maybe you've just read about them, but that can be some of the greatest inspiration as you start going through whatever comes next. And don't be afraid to try stuff. Go to the talks you think might be boring when you're in college. Go and see. You might be surprised by what you like. And if you're not enjoying it, do something else. I think that's such a difficult place to be as a young person and as a student and as a college student whose parents are paying for college, you know, to tell them you don't want to do what you said you wanted to do when you were 16, that maybe you don't want to be a doctor, you want to be a scientist instead. Parents don't always know what that means. Students don't always know what that means. But just keep trying things and find that thing that you're most excited about and find that person who can help you and support you along that journey. That was a lot of advice, but I think it boils down to that, finding your passion and people who support you.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much. That's all I had for you, Dr. Newman, but it was so wonderful to meet you. And continue to keep inspiring and just thank you so much for being here today.
Okay,
Yeah,
Jamie,
thank
I'm going to
you.
ask you something.
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
So, you know, we live in a world where we are juggling a million different things. You, in describing your work, you have a ultra full plate, which means there are going to be pressure points, stress from time to time. And I feel like our young people today are overrun with stress much more than when I was their age. So I want you to describe your perfect day that would allow you to decompress. What is it that you would do from the time you got up until the time you put your head on your pillow at night?
That is a great question. Probably one I need to think more about. I'll tell you, I would do like to run. I am not the runner I was in college, but it is the time that is for me, or actually the time I socialize the most. I run with a couple friends on different days of the week, different friends, and we talk about different things. That is a great way to start my day. I do that very early in the morning. It's still dark outside. So a perfect day would have me not running in the dark. I'd wake up a little bit later, leave a little bit later, and get some vitamin D while I was out there. But that, I love doing that. So, and then I think coffee and hanging out with my family. I love doing stuff with my kids, maybe going to the farmer's market. That's always fun. The library, we love going to the library, and I love just watching them find who they are. They're 7 and 9 years old, and I can see it happening. You know, what is it they're most excited about? It changes almost daily, but some things remain consistent. And then maybe I wouldn't have to cook dinner, you know, maybe we'd be getting takeout so I don't have to wash the dishes or plan a meal, a movie, and going to bed early. That sounds like a great day, Kathy.
That does sound like a good day. I've not had one of those in a while. I think I wanted to bring that up because I want our young ladies to realize that they're going to have to find that outlet for, you know, those pressure points and their stress. And Ashni, I hope you found that because you're in a very high pressure situation yourself at a young age. And so if we're going to get across the finish line, we have to take care of ourselves. And so self-care is very important. And I think when you pointed out early, Jamie, to find your passion can be all kinds of things. It can be rooted in STEM, but it can also be in music or theater or the outdoors. And so I think that's really good advice. One last question. Perfect meal. What's your perfect meal?
Oh, well, I'll tell you what I ate a lot in grad school. That's still like my favorite, and I think my daughter's favorite too, is chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. I know maybe that's wrong, but it's such a comfort food. I think that's why, like when grad school and I was super stressed, that was my favorite thing to have. Just mac and cheese, really, you know?
There's
So
nothing wrong with comfort food. It comes in all size. Hey, this has been a wonderful evening together. Ashni, don't you think Dr. Newman knocked it out of the park?
Yes, she absolutely did. She was amazing. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Jamie,
well,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much for joining us this evening. We're so excited to continue this series. Every time we do it, I'm more and more proud of Ashni. This was her brainchild. She brought it to us. and she is just pushing us right along, and it's exciting. And so we'll be searching out our next featured guest. And so I can't wait to see who that's going to be. And I would be remiss if I didn't say how grateful we are to the National Girls Collaborative Project for allowing us to do this in partnership with them and present it for a wider audience, and how cool it is that our Louisiana Girls Collaborative is actually the home for this. And so it makes me very proud of our girls. It makes me proud of our efforts here in Louisiana, and to be out there leading as we go forward. And so on that note, Jamie, thanks again. Ashni, thank you. And to everybody out there, we'll see you next time to see how someone else does STEM her way.